If your 11-year-old daughter is regularly raped by organised gangs of Pakistani Muslim men, should you be concerned? Well, if you live in Rotherham, England, yes, you should be very concerned about being a racist. Not only that, if you find the house where your daughter is being raped and you go there and try to remove her, the police will be called and you will be arrested. This is how we roll in multicultural England, a green and pleasant land of tolerance, diversity and Pakistani Muslim child rape gangs. Haven't we done well? The stubborn refusal of the authorities in Rotherham to deal with this very serious problem over many years is abnormal behaviour. It's the kind of irrational, cult-like response you would expect from people who've been trained to think and behave this way against their better judgment. A normal person would have dealt with this problem as soon as it became apparent, but the people who make these decisions in Rotherham and in all the other towns where this has happened are not normal people. The reason these rapes were deliberately ignored year after year is because they were carried out by Pakistani Muslims and because the police and social services in Rotherham are run by a bunch of cowardly, progressive, cultural self-haters and racists who are so morbidly terrified of being called racist they will willingly sacrifice 1,400 children to sexual predators and then try to silence anyone who draws attention to it. This kind of desperate progressive extremism is even worse than Islamic extremism because it's more insidious. And it's poisoned local authorities all over this country and created a climate of fear where it's become literally more than your job is worth to do the right thing. Everyone who works in local government knows full well that if you don't subscribe to this progressive moral depravity, you can say goodbye to your career. And that's why this keeps happening. It happens so often nobody's even surprised anymore. We're disgusted, of course, angry, ashamed, embarrassed, but not surprised. We expect this to happen in Britain now. And we know that it will happen again and again, because we know now that the people responsible for not letting it happen, not just in Rotherham, but all over this country, are not normal people. Even now you get the sense that nobody involved in this scandal believes they did anything wrong, and that most of them would behave the same way again if they thought they'd get away with it. It's a curious mindset that seems to transcend normal values, as if their minds have been programmed and trained in some way, almost as if they shared some kind of sinister common purpose. And this, coincidentally, is what I would like to know. How many of these Rotherham racists have been officially brainwashed by a cultural Marxist propaganda organisation called Common Purpose? If you don't know anything about these people, they are worth looking into. Common Purpose is a registered charity that's been described as a kind of secretive left-wing Freemasonry. It offers what it calls leadership development programmes to selected progressive-minded candidates, training them how to operate the levers of power behind the scenes and how to work within a network of like-minded others to move society in a more progressive direction, whether people want it or not. Training them to lead beyond authority, as they put it, a telling phrase. People are selected for their potential to occupy positions of influence in, say, the media or in what's laughingly called public service, so that progressive, politically correct ideas can then infiltrate and permeate every level of society and push it in the right direction. I mean the correct direction, without anyone's knowledge or permission. This is what they mean by a common purpose. And they're very secretive about what they actually teach people, so there's a lot of justifiable suspicion about their activities and their motives, especially since government departments and other public bodies like the BBC, the police, the NHS and others have been persuaded to spend thousands of pounds of public money sending people to be trained on these secretive social engineering courses. It's been happening now for many years, and thousands of these graduates, as they're called, have now been trained. Many of them occupy key positions in all these dysfunctional, diversity-obsessed, management-laden organisations, including, of course, local government, where they're particularly active and where they're free to exert their malign influence on an unsuspecting community of normal people. And one of these graduates, it seems, is Rotherham's Director of Child Services, one of the people most heavily implicated in this scandal, and a notorious progressive bigot who in the past has taken children away from people whose politics she personally disapproved of. So, without wishing to be excessively nosy, I would quite like to know how many more of these Rotherham racists have been trained by Common Purpose to lead beyond authority. because their determined refusal to address this problem and their apparent determination to suppress all evidence points very strongly to a shared agenda and to a resolute common purpose seriously at odds with the values of normal people, the ones they're supposed to be serving. Everyone's talking now, of course, about the usual lessons to be learned, but there's only one lesson to be learned here. It's a lesson we've been taught time and again, but we just don't seem to want to learn it. And that is that all the child rapes in Rotherham and in all the other towns could have been prevented if the agencies responsible for that were run by normal people and not by a sinister network of abnormal, morally brainwashed, progressive, cultural self-haters and racists, most of whom will now keep their lucrative jobs. The few who don't will quickly find similar employment elsewhere, because this is a culture in which nobody is ever to blame, which is why this will happen again and again. Their criminal negligence will cost them nothing. It's almost as if they're being protected by someone with whom they share some kind of common purpose.